Campbelltown tonight is absolutely dreich. It's just raining, really low cloud and mist. Out there somewhere it's supposed to be Island de Var. Can't see a thing.
The rest of the country at this time seemed to be enjoying hot and settled weather, but unfortunately it wasn't at the west coast of Scotland. For the following 3 days, the weather continued to be exactly the same, very poor conditions. So we took the opportunity to do our laundry and to explore and enjoy Campbelltown as best we could. This Celtic cross in Campbelltown was thought to be carved at Iona Abbey in 1180. Many years ago there were over 30 distilleries in Campbelltown, but today there are only 3, and this is one of them at Springbank. We went to have a look around, and of course I had to get a bottle of the golden nectar.
It's Saturday the 9th of July. We are just leaving Campbelltown and Campbeltown Lough, and our intended destination is Glenarm in Northern Ireland. This is the first decent weather we've had since Tuesday when we arrived here, and that was pretty windy, but it's been absolutely terrible since then. Visibility very poor, rain, cold, windy. Dreich, yes. So we're just glad to see a little bit of sunshine at the moment and get out of here. So there we go.
We got the sails up and we were doing okay until we passed Sander Island, and straight away the wind lightened and we had to motor sail again. However, we certainly weren't complaining, as it was just good to be out in some fair weather again and get away from the poor conditions in Campbelltown. During the passage we passed 2 yachts motor sailing in the opposite direction.
Time to change the courtesy flag again. Scotland coming down, Northern Ireland going back up. The vessel you can see here is called the Alizé. He's been running up the coast here of Northern Ireland, and we've been keeping an eye on him on the AIS. His closest approach is 0.4 of a nautical mile, so I think we're going to cross his path quite easily. It's really grey on this side of the Irish Sea. We've left the good weather behind in Scotland. You can't believe it, can you? Having to run with the motor on, very light winds at the moment, just motor sailing in to Glenarm, and we're about 9 miles away.
As we got closer to Northern Ireland, we noticed that the depth of water underneath us had increased dramatically, and the maximum depth that we noticed was 305 metres. As you can see on the Julie cam, there are 2 fish farms outside of Glenarm with quite a sizable gap in between them. There were buoys around the periphery, so we had no problem getting through. If you don't actually know where the marina is in Glenarm Bay, it's not actually that apparent. We picked it up eventually in the binoculars, but we found that the church spire gave a good reference point to aim at. Also, it wasn't that apparent where the entrance to the marina was, and it was difficult to see until you got almost up to the marina, then you could see the gap to turn into. Julie was about to step over the guardrail when we noticed that there were 2 gentlemen on the hammerhead waiting to take our lines. They both worked at the marina and had stayed on a little later in order to see us in, so thank you very much to those 2 gentlemen. Glenarm wasn't a particularly big marina, but it seemed well sheltered and the facilities were quite good there. If we were going north and going to the west of the Kintyre Peninsula to maybe the island of Gigha or Islay, this would be the ideal place to jump off from to get through the North Channel. As the weather was settled, we only intended to stay 1 night in Glenarm, then move on the following day. One thing we found about the people of Northern Ireland and Scotland was the friendliness that they showed to us as visitors, and Glenarm was no exception. After our evening meal, we went for a walk around the town. Here is the church with its spire that was a good landmark for coming in to find the marina. There's also a castle and grounds to explore, but on this occasion we just didn't have time. We found Glenarm a very pleasant place indeed, and somewhere where it would be good to stay a little longer and explore more, so we've noted all this for our next visit. Wall murals seem to be quite popular in Northern Ireland, and this one was very welcoming. Before we left the marina the following day, we got chatting to some local people who gave us some really good information about our next destination. Just leaving Glenarm and heading for Carrickfergus.
Well, it's lunchtime on Magic Hawk now. We're having to motor today, not even motor sail. The sea is absolutely glassy. There's 0.9 knots of true wind and getting less. It's a very calm and cloudy though day, and quite a bit of mist around as well. We keep getting the odd boat appearing out of the mist. We're on a stretch of coast we don't know, of course, and we've got to go between 2 rock formations down here called the Maidens and Hunter's Rock. So hopefully I've put a waypoint somewhere in the middle, and let's hope George finds it okay. So that's about it. I'll carry on with my lunch. although it's quite misty today, it's quite misty ahead, it's not really bad enough to have the radar going, but I thought it'd be a good test. So I've actually got it overlaid on the multifunction display at the moment. I've no idea if this is going to work, but there we go. It's showing the coastline. It matches up, and I seem to have a couple of targets ahead in the distance, and I can see little black blobs there, so perhaps it's working okay. And over there through the mist is the port of Lough. We just saw the ferry come in from Stranraer. It was called the European Causeway. On our port side are two groups of rocks. The left hand one is the West Maiden, and the eastern one the East Maiden, I think. Just outside of the port of Lough. This is Blackhead Lighthouse, and it's on the north side of the entrance to Belfast Lough. We're still motoring away. I've only seen a maximum of 2.9 knots of wind today, so it's been very, very still. We've just passed Blackhead, and I believe this town is called Whitehead. It's full of coloured houses, a bit Tobermory-ish.
Sadly, we didn't get any footage of our entrance into Carrickfergus Marina, which was actually through some quite shallow water. However, once we were in, I managed to photograph these two Stena ferries crossing right in the middle of the entrance from our perspective. There was plenty of passing traffic to look at, and we actually ate out in the cockpit for the first time for a long, long time. One thing that was annoying though was the amount of noise made by the black-headed gulls and terns late at night and early in the morning. And here is our track from Glenarm to Carrickfergus. The visitors' berths in the marina were either on a long pontoon to the right of the entrance or on the hammerheads to the left, and we were asked to go onto a hammerhead. Unfortunately, the disadvantage was to get to the bridge to exit the marina, you had to walk virtually 2/3 of the way down the marina, walk across, then 2/3 back to the base of the bridge. From the pontoon on the right, it was just a short walk. There seemed to be an endless stream of traffic going up and down the loch. Belfast port itself was very, very busy. On the waterfront in Carrickfergus was the famous Norman Castle. Not sure if visitors were allowed in, but we couldn't find an entrance that was open. Nearby was a statue of King William III of Orange. Carrickfergus was a nice enough place, and the marina facilities were very, very good, and the Sainsbury's supermarket was literally 100 metres away. The war memorial in the town was very impressive, and it included a field gun and a tank. Belfast was a fair distance away from Carrickfergus, but it was clear to see the huge cranes, which I think are called Samson and Goliath, in the distance, and they dominated the skyline. We were standing on the edge of Carrickfergus harbour, which is next to Carrickfergus Marina. We couldn't quite work it out really, as there were quite a few marina berths in there, but only about half a dozen boats. Being owners of a westerly yacht, we always look for other westerlies in marinas, and this was a lovely example of a westerly Griffon too. At lunchtime we broke open a bag of haggis flavoured crisps which we brought from Scotland, and they were delicious.
Okay, it's the 13th of July and we're just leaving Carrickfergus. It's getting on for 2 PM in the afternoon and we're heading down to Ardglass.
As we exited the marina, the wind was really blowing hard from the direction of Belfast, and initially we thought the forecast must be wrong because it wasn't supposed to be that strong. However, it was mainly an acceleration of the wind along the shoreline, as it was much better out in the channel. There are 2 transit posts near the marina entrance with triangles on in order to give a leading line for the channel, but we found that they were very difficult to see. There was also a sector light which was much easier to see, and as you can see we were way out of the channel. We only needed the Genoa to sail out of the loch, as we had the wind mainly behind, and by the time we got to the Helens Bay buoy, the wind was nice and steady. Once out of Belfast Lough, we turned south and sailed through the tidal gate at Donaghadee.
It's Wednesday the 13th still. It's about 7:15 in the evening now. We've got the engine running. We've lost the wind, very, very light at the moment. We are about 3 miles from Strangford Lough, and beyond that is Ardglass where we're making for. So we should be in about an hour and a half, something like that. It's sort of grey and just fair, I suppose you'd call it. It's not particularly warm. Both got the full gear on to keep us warm. Yeah, where's this heat wave that the rest of the country is supposed to be having? Because we haven't had it.